So I think we'll go ahead and get started. I think we're good to go here. So I want to welcome everybody to the 16th installment of the I Think I Can't Speak for Everyone Here reading series. This is a reading series for writers, people who have written, are writing, or who I think should be writing. Though poetry is kind of my way of stopping time to keep the past the same, this is a writer's space. So vignettes, silences, songs, poems, excerpts from novels and stories, basically anything from that part of you that writes down the world is welcome, is your space. Whether reading or not, you can turn your camera on or off depending on your comfort level. I would ask, of course, that you keep your audio off for when anybody's reading. If there's anything I need to know that I'm not seeing, you can drop it in the chat. I'll pay attention to that. You can direct message me on the chat, as I said, to sign up for the open mic. And afterward, if you have any questions, requests, or comments, you can direct them to bluejawedsnake@gmail.com, which I also dropped in the chat as well. Readings will be on the YouTube channel within a day or so of the reading. I also dropped the YouTube channel link in the chat as well. With that, I think I'll go ahead and introduce our featured reader today, Aditi Machado. Aditi Machado's books of poetry are Material Witness, Emporium, and Some Beheadings, all from Nightboat. Other works include an essay pamphlet from Ugly Duckling called The End, several poetry chapbooks, and a translation of Farid Tali's novel, Prosopopoeia. She serves as an advisory poetry editor for the Paris Review and teaches at the University of Cincinnati. I came to Aditi's work through their collection Material Witness, which I suggest to everybody get as soon as possible. Her work for me, what I like about it is it's kind of steeped in invention, perfumed by creation, and finds the precise imbalance between maker and vessel. And I'm super excited for you to hear her read. I'm going to go ahead and give Aditi the spotlight.
Thanks so much, Barton. I can be heard all right? Okay, awesome. Thanks for being here, folks. And also, Barton did, the very first review for this book. So thank you so much for that. I also like that you called it, I think, a responsorial, which made me think of responsorial psalms. It from like way back when I used to have to go to mass with my family. I don't know if that's where it's from, but I really like the format. Okay, so I haven't done a Zoom reading in a minute. So I'll just say that because I can see some of you, but I can't hear anyone. If at any point you want to interrupt me or ask me something or just like get me to slow down or stop, feel free to. I'm pretty casual. You can do the chat thing or you can unmute. I thought I'd start actually with a poem that's not from the book, just because I was given the generosity of so much time. And so I'll actually drop a link to this project because I think it's so cool. And I want to shout it out. So this is it's sort of like it's my poem, but it's not my poem because it's part of a collaborative mistranslation series by a really fantastic poet and translator named Katrine Jensen, who translates the Danish poet Ursula Olsen. And like she's done like the trilogy of that basically anything that exists in English, as far as I know, of Ursula Olsen has been done by Katrine Jensen. And then she sort of, having done 3 books that form a trilogy, she decided to do these kind of more unconventional translations that she calls mistranslations, and which the poet is totally into and is also part of. And then she sort of invited a few different people to do these, and I was lucky to be one of them. And so we did kind of like a back and forth, and I guess if you were interested, you could follow the link and read. Like it's sort of like I do a version and then Katrine does one and back and forth. but I'll just read the very last one. No, you know what? Actually, let me read the very first poem, which is, like kind of the standard English translation of Ursula Olsen's poem. And then I'll read the second translation that I did. So this is from My Jewel Box. I stand ready, donning a chain, ring, crown, that landscape, a human place, an inhuman place between the hills, stretching mucous membranes and muscles to the limit, pulling mucous membranes and muscles, connective tissue together around what's inside. Counter atrophy, circumvent, overthrow, pump fresh blood out into chains, reeds, bonds. A seashell lined with mother of nothing, a seashell lined with mother of everything. So then there's like I'm scrolling through the website, the webpage. So if I'm sounding like, hey, this is what's happening in a kind of scrolling fashion, that's what's happening. There's a mistranslation that I did through a kind of bibliomancy procedure that actually made my translation, my very first translation, really, really long, which is, I guess, why I'm not reading it. And then Katrine did this wild mistranslation of my mistranslation through Metal Songs. And then from that version, I did, the process was to attend to the ems and ums of Jensen's poem, because there was a lot of consonants there with the sound M. And then I also kind of did it in syllabics. Okay, so they're all of them are 6-syllable lines. O silver serpent of signs, it is you who corrupt my rayless corpus, you who chain me to this gilded algorithm. I ascend the crystal mountain. You bind me to its alchemical will. I ascend the underworld. You conjure a ripped equilibrium. I enter your lucent crypt on the verge of being. Now I am and I am the unstable and the rare, and thus do I rust in your recombinant gaze. Thus do I multiply six in speech. I irradiate your network. I aestheticize your metal womb. Oh, sick hum, I sought you out, and you went platinum on me. Okay, so I'll read some poems from Material Witness, and I actually thought that I might, the book is composed of just 6 poems, but, 2 of them are pretty long. I would say somewhere between like 18 to 30 pages each. And then a couple are pretty short, like 2 pages. And then there's like in between that. The very first poem, the opening poem, is it's the titular piece. And I think I'll just read that. I will change one word, which I think that this is what I'm gonna probably do anytime I read this poem. The poem starts, it's Thursday, but I thought I'll just replace it with whatever day it is today. So, Material Witness. It's Sunday. There's a band playing in the snow, losing its distinction. You film it, disaffected by the cold, and the faces turning like leaves in a blue autumn. The blizzard is a case of tinnitus. A speculative wind blows through your instruments, coats fly open, and blood boats. The weather reports itself to a dead vertical left. You film less out of sorrow than out of deference for the nonce of this music. It is a balm. It is a cold day full of plum debts. Yesterday was less cold, de facto blazing. You were visited by a pure circumpapillary green that hurt your eyes. Sometimes experience is phenomenal in its segues. Do you remember you were peeling a turnip? That was some vegetable-colored sky toward which, stupefied, you grew. You became its bespoke leak. You were thinking something the climate kept controlling toward excess. This is what it is like, you thought, listening to the assignations of trees. Meanwhile, you would not eat the turnip. Meanwhile, you sat on a tuffet. Meanwhile, you earned a degree handed to you from a helicopter in the sky. Then there was the day before that, and the day before that, and on, concatenating your sense of being absent design. There was the day you were sent a tube you presumed for breathing. Had you bought it? Nigh impossible remembering anything resembling intention. You held it, gentian, sort of frilled at one end, fluty at the other. You put it to your face. You opened a bottle of acetone, making a positive local escape. Meaning, you discovered you were sovereign. You began to govern yourself by modes of wit. You went to the beach and made to it an invertebrate overture. You lay down slug-like slit belly. What gave? You were entering what then was called the universal, a bit pendulous. You felt a motion that wasn't negative, pulling you toward the ancient texts you had found floating in some sewage. They were from the heyday of psychology. You laughed at this. An animal filament flickered at the edge of sea. By sea they had meant mind. You laughed at this. You observed frothing something of the universe, what stung your toes. Something universal at the edge you nipped into what you'd become. Then came night at a slant and slit your mineral bosom. Proverbial curtain, except it sliced instead of fell clean through the fat of you, doctor, nurse, patient, chaplain of time's bitter continuity. Depths, then, and the foreshadowed room. To your left and up on high, a talisman. It radiated a summary of light. It worked over you in a supervisory capacity. Objects in your purview interrogated your semblance of shadow. As it was in the first book, you had entered a poisoned room. The wills of things leapt out at you. Graphic, you wrote, at the nexus of weird speed and bird nest. As it was in the second book, you lost perspective. The windowsill burst because it was too close. Day of rebellion by means of suicide. Day of rebellion by means of survival. Then, in matters of taste, you became sensible. Rare bottles brought up from the cellar dug up your non-dominant tongue, for which there was a map inscribed on a low patch of kitchen wall, chipped paint pointing to its location in bad faith. This was a period of decay. No, this was when you forked out opinion, your cruelty uniform. Caked in it, you wrote a definition against how it was yesterday. Could it be you were divided into a body politic? Could it be you'd assumed governance, subjection, rebellion, pastoral care, agrarian rights? You released obscenity as from the fibrous heart of artichoke, a quill. Emergent wines, dated wines, you drank them all. You could not, you would not be touched. Depths, then. A green bath to strip out of, feeling yourself nothing in the dark, but an orange erupts in odorous flame and kisses you with the kiss of its mouth. You woke and were haunted. Haunted by discursive strategy, haunted by an inability to name species. Hopping creature prone to dissembling. Potted blue fluff. Thornish Venus luster. your adjectival savvy versus an anfractuous trailing green. You could solve this problem, in theory. It would manifest in low-grade sunshine. Resting on a leafy matrix, your breath rushed into the ruins of some vegetal bones, the feeling of which eroded you, O student of fortune. Then there was no motion. Then it picked up again, the always, already, etc. rejects, your stamina of compost. It was like things deferred their freedom to you. No, it was their kinetic enchantments, haunted in an old mining town turning private investment, haunted in its distinct odor of data, the labored sound of its pipes, in the absence of culture, in the reduction and juice of it. You spat on the inklings of flowers. Death to suburbia, and you began to think again, militantly aroused, resident alien of every which nowhere. There was a radical in your gut. It measured the foreclosure of history. You herded yourself into the killer mass. You became an agent of friptage. Advertisements revealed to you the indelicate names of their products. One day, you dropped your valise and took a survey. The options pacified you, your biochemical responses a kind of legalese. Once it had been written, sacred means saturated with being. You spoke that zone into obliteration, lying out of an abundance of caution in untimely grasses. You could have had visions. You could have had anything you wanted by methods of indiscretion increasingly pervade in those final years in which lyric was put before all, lyric tea, lyric grant, lyric mass shooter, give yourself up, except you couldn't, not to the accountants, not to the heightened scrutability of the land heights you'd fall off of. Then an opaque zone, or darkness bled. Impossible to extract confessions when they're spilling already everywhere. Then bloodless darkness, descent. Trust nothing. The sun is president. 'Twas the modern death of history. 'Twas a heavy period. Big chunks, thick chunks, in your hair. You restructured some lingonberries into pie. Slip of the tongue into particulate wetness. Day of observance, day of war and bombing, day of gazing into the collective navel and the progressive degenerative lace of thine eye. What lurked behind your antique set of taboos made the day go idly by. No. I think I had some delicious fun just ending a poem on no. Anyway. All right. Can't tell how we're doing. Hard to tell. We're doing okay. Okay, I think maybe I'll just read in order. I mean, I don't know, some of the last poem is really, really long and I read from it a lot. So unless people have like a request or something, I'll just read a few more pages. Okay, so this is one of the shorter poems. I am capable of them. And it's called What Use? To supplant the septum ring, it is rousing. It is a formal concern. It is to raise it to lips, the fruit entering its ample folds, folds that ogre the present, and to be here now, wherein it creeps out of you, what answers you in the violet unknown, the period accelerating into the eye like a gelatin bullet, like surrogate glitter, shreds of intensity, like light against needles of the eastern hemlock shreds. It is to go on like this, to be repeatedly denied, It is what it is to be a formal concern, and the feeling transcripts making a little heap. It is, as it were, down to the wire. Okay, so this next one is it's the last poem I wrote for the book, and it reads somewhat deliberately, quite differently from the others, and my joke that I don't have to worry about whether people are going to laugh or not because I can't hear you anyway, is that this is my only confessionalist poem because I don't really write them. But I don't know, I've read it like maybe once to a room of people. I think it was just one, no, maybe twice. Once in Cincinnati and once in Athens, Georgia. And at some point, I think people catch on to the nature of the confession. And I can tell, but I'm not going to be able to tell. So you might end up just thinking that I'm an asshole for this being my confessional poem. But I guess I'm doing it anyway. All right, this is called Bent Record. In starlight and in the hum of typing, I admit it was I. I admit it was I who erased the posters in the mean street, and it was I who found the body. It was I who discovered the plant, and I who named it imperially after my own self. Then I ironed out the language, and I showed my work in the cruddy journals of the time. It is not the case that wax had dripped upon the pillow. This was not the sign. But it is that I invested public moneys in a variant distance off the shore in which the lighthouse seemed a tallow stick. I did indeed compose the philosophy, and did so in broad daylight, bearing its illegible whips. In this way, I aroused complexity in myriad roses. Oh, pity the wild geranium and the dense, blazing star. But to return to that night, indeed it was I who witnessed the overwhelming meet and precedence of summer as it received one into a vexed relation with the cooling effects of trees. It was I who circulated the yellow memo, and I who poisoned the well. And I established the literature, knowing full well the problems of the real world to a less real one exquisitely apply. It was thus I of whom it was said, she availed of little caution. I came to surmise on the porch of autumn, with citrus discs and beads of solar attrition. I was akimbo. I was inclined to fly, a flicker of madness. I had achieved my historic high, and I knew just enough to be toxic to the earth. In the raw bar of moonlight, I projected my one feeling, which littered the street and mobilized dawn, and the sun came down its high metaphor and distended the body's odor, and it was I who said, something is rotten in the state. For in such palaces as these, one is armed with barbs to the teeth. And yes, I darkened the web, and I defrauded the publican, and on stormy nights I withheld from classification those very secrets which pierce the hearts of young historians. Indeed, it was I to whom it was said, slow the fuck down, and I did not. I lived in directionless desire, intransigent, bullish. I ventured out in viral fields, and I rode my bad scooter, which killed the coral reef. I withdrew my affections, which bolstered certain militias, and I suffered publicly excesses of feeling, which eliminated the most well-bred of my rivals. It was under these circumstances that I came to speak for the Republic. And this in the hot sun, which burned to a cinder, the very thing I sought to make you forget, and forget you have, drinking the choicest of my ales. And yet, I have done only some of what I could do to secure my freedom. Of nuance, I am the consequent animal, unsubtle. I live in intricacies of the obvious, into which I permit your entry. For indeed, yes, over this too, I maintain a modicum of power. Um, kind of don't want to end on that evil poem, so I'll read the tiniest bit from the next poem, which is I mean, it's only a few pages in the book, but if you put every little section, tiny section on a separate page, it'd be like 41 sections. I'm not going to read all of them, but it is sort of kind of the heart of the book, just both, you know, in where it's placed in the physical text, but also I would say just it feels like the heart of the book in a different way. It's a poem called Concerning Matters Culinary, which is based on, or rather, I don't know if it's based on so much as it was sort of started because I, you know, many years ago I came across this I don't know, for some ridiculous reason I decided I needed to know what the first ever recipe book was in the world. And I, you know, obviously nobody is 100% certain, but one theory is this Latin text from the late Roman Empire. And that is, you know, concerning matters culinary with that sort of odd placement of the adjective is sort of how you would directly translate the Latin. And it's just recipes from that time. So it sort of gives you like historical insight into that time. But they're also, you know, if as long as you can find the ingredients, you can sort of replicate the recipes, and you might have to just like figure out what like ancient system of measurement they're using. And there are people who have like tried to kind of just like adapt the recipes to the 20th and 21st century. So it's possible to find those recipes. But anyway, it was just kind of for like our Latin reading group. And I just found the recipes just kind of really fascinating. And there's one in there that I love talking about because the name of the dish or beverage rather is conditum paradoxum, which translates to spiced paradox. And I just love that so much. And it turns out it's a recipe for mulled wine. And basically just all of that kind of gave me this idea that I wanted to write my own poetic recipes. And so I do like make them up. I don't know, they're probably kind of disgusting. I've never actually cooked them, but like one is the tuna seared a bit uneven, sits cadmium upon fine sheets of guava. That's supposed to be a dish. And that's a little poem. There's a few of those, but they also just sort of turn into these like meditations on gustatory life. But what I'll read is just the last page, which is the kind of like the postscript to the poem. And it goes like this. So that I do not obsess, so that I do not obsess over the fig, I place it on a rim. So that I do not forget the fig, I move it, it bursts. The sap of figs is cruel. The way they are wrapped is cruel. They burst. So that I learn kindness, the fig, the fig. I'll stop there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Aditi. That was lovely. Interesting that you had mentioned uh, about Jensen translations of Olson. Oh, am I unmuted? Everybody can hear me? Okay, cool. Yeah. When I first read Material Witness, there were two things that reminded me of. Annalise Gelman is a poet I really like, and then I was reminded, not reminded, but it put me in mind of Outgoing Vessel, Third Millennium Heart, and My Jewel Box by um, Olson, translated by Jensen or mistranslated. So yeah, everybody, I would definitely check out those mistranslations. And again, thank you, Aditi, for the surrogate glitter, the ingredients that bring time to us, and for being here today and for saying yes. That was a beautiful reading. Didn't really see anybody for the open mic, so I'm just going to read one poem real quick, and then I'll let everybody get out of here on a Sunday. I'm going to read a poem called "What God Is" from Catherine de Lancelotti's collection "Impossible Thirst." It's an older collection. Catherine de Lancelotti actually has another collection out this week, actually, called Figure Study, which I haven't read yet, but I would encourage everybody to check out. But this poem is called "What God Is," and I'm old, so yeah. So I don't want to hear what God is from a book or a capitalist, a bearded man on a spiritual quest, or from a pulpit. I don't want to hear about sin or that desire leads to suffering. I want a God who is tantric, moves slow from toe to crown, one who appears in fire, in lotus, and between breath. I want a God who watches from as far as Sirius, close as skin, bright stat, obsidian. I want a God who is an artist, a woman, a man, one who labors and bleeds, suckles on the afterbirth. I want a God small enough to watch the sun fall into the Pacific, to climb a eucalyptus, to ravage a wild blackberry. A God who takes pride in skinning the mule deer, finds pleasure in its helpless sway. I want God to walk down the golden staircase for a taste of this delicious hell. All right. And with that, thank you everybody for being here. Again, the reading will be on the YouTube channel within a day or so. And all right, yeah, love y'all. Thanks for being here, and see you later.